Building on our discussion of argumentative techniques, let's now explore clear how these were applied in the realm of ethics. We're diving into the world of the Sophists and their take on arete, or excellence. It wasn't just a buzzword, it was a central theme. Think about the dysoi logoi, that fascinating text wrestling with whether wisdom and arete can be taught. The author basically flips the script on the no teachers argument by saying, hold on, what do the Sophists teach if not these very things? It's a direct challenge, positioning the Sophists as purveyors of this crucial concept. And then you have Prodicus, explicitly championing arete through his famous choice of Heracles. Now let's zoom in on Prodicus' choice of Heracles. We don't have the original manuscript, sadly, but Xenophon gives us a pretty good paraphrase, and other ancient sources back it up. Imagine Heracles standing at a crossroads facing two paths. One path is paved with the smooth stones of Kakia, offering easy, fleeting pleasures. Think of it as the fast lane to mediocrity. The other path, representing arete, is rough, steep, and long, demanding exertion, hydrotus. The Scholiast to Aristophanes confirms this setup. Heracles chooses arete's tough climb over Kakia's easy downhill slide. What's really cool is that Prodicus seems to be riffing off Hesiod's classic works and days. Hesiod already laid out this contrast. Badness is easy and close, while arete requires effort from the immortal gods. Xenophon even quotes Hesiod directly in his version of the story. So, the message is crystal clear. Prodicus wasn't just telling a myth, he was using it as a powerful educational tool, pushing people towards the path of civic virtue, the hard but ultimately rewarding way. Okay, so Prodicus is pushing for arete. But what exactly did the Sophists mean by it? This is where things get interesting, especially when compared to Plato. Later philosophers often tied arete directly to the state of your psyche, your inner character, your virtues like justice and self-control. They saw cultivating this inner state as key to achieving eudaimonia, or personal flourishing. But here's the twist. The evidence suggests the Sophists didn't quite frame it that way. When they talked about pursuing arete, they weren't primarily talking about polishing your soul like a gem. Instead, they were talking about pursuing an excellent form of life. Think of it less like internal software and more like the overall operating system and user experience of your life. In this context, arete functions almost like eudaimonia does later on. It's the ultimate goal, the prize you're aiming for. Now, translating arete as excellence works well, capturing its high value, but it's worth noting that sometimes the Greeks seem to use it for something even higher, maybe optimality. But let's stick with excellence for now. Let's unpack this term arete a bit more. First off, it's an evaluative term. Words like good, excellent, best all carry value judgments. You can say something is good, but not excellent, or all are excellent, but this one is best. So arete points to a very high degree of value, maybe not quite the absolute peak, but darn close. Now here's a crucial point. Aretes isn't just for people. Look at the examples. A doctor praising the lubricant nature of gruel, Herodotus talking about the arete of Darius' horse, Thucydides discussing the arete of fertile land. It applies to objects, animals, even landscapes. When it comes to people, it gets even broader. It can describe moral character, sure, but also non-moral traits, ethical actions, unethical actions, and even aspects of a person that aren't easily reduced to just their psychology or deeds, like being favored by the gods. This flexibility is key. So if arete can mean so many things, how do we know what someone means in a specific context? Easy. Context. Context tells us what kind of value we're talking about. Is it instrumental value, something useful for achieving another goal? Or constitutive value, something that makes up part of what something is? And importantly, value comes in different kinds, ethical versus non-ethical. But here's the critical thing, the meaning of arete itself doesn't change. The word retains its core sense of excellence. What changes is the specification. Think about it. Calling a soldier agathos aristos or exhibiting arete on a battlefield clearly means martial excellence. Tyrtaeus explicitly says he wouldn't praise someone for arete of running or wrestling, even if they were super strong. Homer lists every sort of arete, ranging from running to fighting. The term arete stays the same. The context specifies the type of excellence being discussed. Let's look at some sophistic examples. Gorgias, in his Olympic oration, talks about needing two arete for success, boldness and wisdom. The way he phrases it, boldness to face risk, wisdom to understand the riddle, clearly points to psychological qualities needed for the task. This seems like the only clear instance from 5th century philosophers, or sophists, where arete refers directly to a mental state. But shift gears to Gorgias' Helen. Here he says the adornment of a city is manly valor, of a body is beauty, of a soul is wisdom, and of an action is arete. See the shift? Arete now describes the quality of the action itself. Democritus echoes this, urging people to strive for deeds and actions of arete, not just talk the talk. So we see arete applied to both the mind and the deed. Now let's circle back to Prodicus Heracles. Given what we've learned about how arete could be used, how should we reinterpret Heracles' choice? Is it just about finding the right inner feelings? Probably not the main point. Sure, cultivating good psychological traits is essential for living a life of arete, but the focus here seems broader. The bearer of arete, the thing that embodies excellence, isn't just Heracles' soul or mindset. It's his entire human life, the person responsible for that life. And what kind of life is being championed? Not just any good life, but specifically a life of civic excellence. So, what is civic excellence? Simply put, it's success as a citizen. This encompasses both public and private achievements. Publicly, it means making significant positive contributions to your fellow citizens and the polis. Think leadership, service, benefiting the community. Privately, it involves managing your estate effectively and having a flourishing family. Importantly, this success is measured by commonly accepted standards. While both areas matter, the spotlight often falls on the public sphere. Look again at Prodicus' arete figure. She promises that following her path leads to performing admirable actions, ergon kalon, which include helping friends, aiding the polis, and doing good for all of Greece. Heracles becomes good at performing these noble actions. That's the essence of civic arete in action. Let's look at another piece of evidence, the anonymous iamblichi. This is a collection of fragments from a sophistic work, identified because they survived in Iamblichus' later text. The big question it tackles is how a young man can achieve arete in its fullest sense. Fragment 1 starts by listing things you might want to perfect: wisdom, manliness, eloquence, and arete. The structure suggests arete is distinct from the others, not just a subset. Then Fragment 2 says arete is composed of many actions. It's not just about having the right mindset, it's about doing things. And Fragment 3 nails it down. Achieving complete arete means being beneficial to the most people. Partial arete means benefiting fewer. This paints arete not as a single moment of brilliance, but as a consistent pattern of action over time, whose value is judged by how many people you help. It's fundamentally about public contribution. Now here's a really important nuance. The value of achieving civic arete isn't just about intrinsic worth. Think about winning a race. Your speed is intrinsic, but the value of your victory might depend heavily on the prestige of the event. Winning the Olympics is way more impressive than winning your local park race, right? Similarly, the value of a political career or a series of actions can depend significantly on public esteem. This is why Arte is so closely tied to concepts like honor time, glory kleos, and renowned doxa. The anonymous Iamblichi text actually starts by talking about acquiring doxa, fair fame, and the conditions for getting it are exactly the same as for getting arete. How do you get that public trust and fame? It's hard. People don't like giving honor away because they feel they're losing something. But if you consistently prove yourself genuinely beneficial to the community, slowly and surely, you earn their trust pistis and fair fame euclea. So, in this view, arete isn't just about your actions. It's about your actions and the public recognition they bring. Let's pull this all together. What emerges from looking at texts like Prodicus, the anonymous Iamblichi, and others is a consistent picture of sophistic ethics, particularly what we can call civic ethics. Forget the idea that sophists were just about inner psychological states or the later philosophical focus on eudaimonia as ultimate well-being. For them, the pursuit of arete meant pursuing an excellent life, and that life was defined by civic success. What did that mean practically? It meant succeeding as a citizen, making significant positive contributions to your community and fellow citizens, and importantly, gaining the public esteem that comes with it. So civic ethics in this context is essentially ethics advising individuals to pursue their success as citizens, primarily through doing good for the polis and earning respect. We've seen two clear examples of this civic ethics in philosophical works: Prodicus' Choice of Heracles, pushing for admirable civic actions, and the anonymous Iamblichi, detailing how to achieve civic arte through beneficial deeds and public trust. There's a third, albeit frustratingly lost, example: Hippias' Trojan dialogue. We don't have the text, but testimonies tell us it was a dialogue, like Prodicus, featuring mythological figures Neoptolemus and Nestor. According to Hippias himself, as reported by Plato, Nestor was educating the young Neoptolemus on how to gain the best reputation by undertaking admirable pursuits. Even though Plato's account uses the word kalon admirable excessively due to the dialogue's theme, what is the admirable? The core message is clear. Nestor was teaching Neoptolemus how to achieve the best reputation through admirable actions. This sounds exactly like an education in pursuing civic arte, just like the other examples. It's not just in philosophical dialogues that sophists engaged with civic arte. They also praised and memorialized it in other contexts. Take Gorgias' funeral oration. He praises fallen soldiers for achieving an arte that is divine and a mortality that is human. This clearly links arte to the ultimate sacrifice for the polis, a contribution whose significance transcends death, hence divine. Now, this speech was likely a model for others, not necessarily delivered at a real funeral, but it shows the sophist's rhetorical skill in celebrating civic virtue. Then there's Hippias again, this time compiling the first ever published list of Olympic victors. Why did he do this around 400 BCE? Well, Elis, his home city, controlled Olympia, but was facing a potential threat from Sparta. Compiling this list, highlighting past glories and achievements, was probably a strategic move to bolster Elis's prestige and standing. It shows how sophists, often acting as envoys or civic leaders, actively contributed to and celebrated the civic arte of their polis. Now let's switch gears and talk about the flip side, anti-civic ethics. You'd think, given the caricatures, especially from Plato, that sophists were all about selfishness and ignoring the community. Plato famously called them mercenaries, paid hunters of rich young men, and even likened Thrasymachus to a selfish beast. These portrayals certainly suggest a focus on self-interest. But here's the puzzle. When you actually look for explicit, sophistic texts promoting anti-civic values, ethics that say pursue your own interests, screw everyone else, it's surprisingly hard to find solid examples. Dillon and Gurgel noted that how to succeed in life was a major theme for the sophists. So if they were about success, why isn't there more shouting about, look out, I'm only looking out for number one? One potential source comes from Aristippus of Cyrene. Today we often think of him as a Socratic philosopher, founder of the Cyrenaic school. But hold on, he taught for pay, and Aristotle himself called him a sophist. Xenophon's Memorabilia includes a dialogue between Socrates and Aristippus. Socrates argues for self-control as necessary for ruling. Aristippus agrees that rulership isn't desirable. Instead, he champions a life of greatest ease and pleasure. He believes rulers are enslaved by their subjects' needs, while subjects are free. His solution? A middle path through freedom, achieved by being a stranger everywhere, renouncing all political ties. This sounds like a radical anti-civic stance, prioritizing individual pleasure above all else, including civic duty. And we have other historical accounts confirming his hedonism, lending weight to Xenophon's portrayal here. Another candidate is Antiphon, specifically from his work on truth. Thanks to papyrus discoveries at Oxyrhynchus, we have substantial fragments of this text. What do they contain? A sharp critique of justice as defined by convention, nomos. Antiphon argues that conventional laws often contradict each other and, more importantly, are hostile to nature, physe. Why? Because they force you to endure more pain when less is possible, accept less pleasure when more could be had, and suffer when you could avoid it. His infamous conclusion: one should use justice most advantageously for oneself. How? Obey the laws publicly, but follow nature privately. This is a textbook anti-civic position. Prioritize your own advantage, selectively obey rules only when convenient, and fundamentally distrust conventional morality. It assumes implicitly that acting in your own interest is the natural human drive. But hold on, if these anti-civic positions are genuine, we run into a problem: normativity. If Aristippus really advocated abandoning civic life for pleasure, even just among the elite, wouldn't that lead to societal breakdown? And would Antiphon really advise selective law-breaking, even just for philosophers? It feels politically unstable. Plus, we don't know the exact source for Xenophon's account of Aristippus. Was it hearsay or direct knowledge? And Antiphon's on truth, maybe it was intended for fellow philosophers, not paying clients. The fragments we have are just a sliver of the original. The structure seems odd too, starting with critiques of conventional justice before cosmology, which is unusual. Could it be that Antiphon's aim wasn't just pure anti-civism, but perhaps a critique leading towards reform, aligning society more closely with what he saw as true nature or truth? It's highly speculative, but it raises questions about interpreting these texts solely as anti-civic manifestos. Let's step back and consider this through the lens of eudaimonism. the pursuit of personal well-being or flourishing. Earlier, we saw that sophistic arete, civic excellence, plays a role similar to later eudaimonia. Both seem to represent the ultimate goal. Interestingly, even the anti-civic voices, like Aristippus and Antiphon, seem committed to a form of eudaimonism, albeit a very narrow one. Personal well-being equals fulfilling selfish desires. The real split lies in what they believe constitutes well-being. The civic ethicists argue that true well-being comes from flourishing as a citizen, success, contribution, esteem. The anti-civic ones argue it's purely about maximizing personal pleasure and avoiding pain. It's fascinating that even the civic position, like Prodicus, uses hedonic language describing the pleasures of civic life. Maybe the fundamental disagreement boils down to a dispute about human motivation. Are we naturally driven towards pro-social behavior, or are we fundamentally selfish? So, wrapping up this section, we see that sophistic ethics presents a rich tapestry. The dominant thread is civic ethics, where the pursuit of arete translates into a commitment to living a successful, esteemed, and beneficial life within the polis. Anti-civic ethics exists, particularly in figures like Aristippus and Antiphon, but it's less central and harder to pin down definitively. Ultimately, much of the sophistic debate, whether framed in terms of arete or eudaimonia, revolves around the fundamental question of what truly constitutes a good life for an individual.